I never thought I would be standing in my kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, questioning everything I had believed about my life for the past 5 years. But there I was, frozen in place, watching my daughter-in-law's phone light up with a call and seeing my husband Robert's face smiling back at me from the screen. Robert had been gone for 5 years now, or at least that's what I had been told, what I had believed, what I had mourned every single day since that terrible afternoon when the police came to my door with their somber faces and careful words telling me there had been an accident, that my husband of 32 years was gone. My son Michael had been there that day. He had held me while I cried. He had made all the arrangements. He had been my rock through those dark months of grief. And somehow life had continued, even though I wasn't sure I wanted it to. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, had moved in with me about a year after Robert died. She said she was worried about me being alone in this big house, and I had been grateful for the company, grateful for her cheerful presence in the morning and her help with things around the house that Robert used to take care of. She was always on her phone, texting or calling, and I never thought much of it. Young people these days are always connected, always busy with their devices. It seemed normal, natural even, but that Tuesday afternoon changed everything. Sarah had run upstairs to get something and left her phone on the kitchen counter, where I was preparing dinner. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't the kind of person who invaded other people's privacy. But when that phone rang and lit up, I couldn't help but see the screen. And there he was, Robert. His face filling the screen, that same smile I had loved for over 3 decades. Those same warm brown eyes that had looked at me with such love and devotion for all those years. The same slightly crooked grin that always made my heart skip a beat. The name above the photo said, Robert M. And my hands started shaking so badly, I had to grip the counter to steady myself. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she had named someone else Robert. Maybe this was some cruel coincidence. But deep in my heart, I knew that face. I knew every line, every expression. And this was my husband, my Robert, who was supposed to be dead. I heard Sarah's footsteps on the stairs, and I quickly moved away from the counter, trying to compose myself, trying to look normal, even though my entire world had just shattered for the second time in 5 years. She came into the kitchen, all smiles, and grabbed her phone, answering it as she walked toward the back door. Hey, she said softly, almost tenderly, and then she was outside on the patio, her voice too low for me to hear. I stood there in my kitchen with vegetables half chopped on the cutting board and felt something shift inside me. The grief I had carried for 5 years began to transform into something else, something harder and colder. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about every moment since Robert's supposed death, thinking about Michael's behavior, Sarah's sudden interest in living with me, the way they both seemed to manage my finances and my life with such careful attention. I had been so lost in grief that I hadn't questioned anything I had let them handle. Everything, the insurance, the bank accounts, the house papers, all of it, because I couldn't bear to think about practical matters when my heart was breaking. But now I wondered. Now I questioned everything. The next morning, I called my old friend Patricia, who worked at the county clerk's office. We had known each other since high school, and I trusted her completely. Patricia, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to help me with something, and I need you to not ask questions until I have more information. She must have heard something in my voice, because she agreed immediately. Need to know about the death certificate for Robert. I said, I need to know if it was real." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Margaret," she said slowly, "are you sure you want to go down this road?" "I've never been more sure of anything," I told her. It took her 3 days, but Patricia called me back with information that confirmed my worst fears. There was a death certificate filed for Robert Mitchell. My Robert. But Patricia had done some digging and found inconsistencies in the paperwork, irregularities that suggested it might not be legitimate. "Margaret," she said gently, "I think you need to talk to a lawyer and maybe the police." But I wasn't ready for that, not yet. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what had happened and why. I started paying attention, really paying attention to everything Sarah did, every phone call she made, every time she left the house. I noticed that she went out every Thursday afternoon at exactly 2 o'clock and didn't return until dinner time. So the following Thursday, I followed her. I borrowed Patricia's car so Sarah wouldn't recognize mine, and I kept a safe distance as she drove across town to a neighborhood I didn't know well. She pulled into the driveway of a small, blue house with white shutters and a well-maintained garden. And then I saw him, Robert, walking out of that house, looking older, yes, with more gray in his hair and new lines around his eyes, but alive, so completely and undeniably alive. He smiled when he saw Sarah, that same smile I had thought was reserved for me, and she went to him, and they embraced. And in that moment, I understood that my grief had been manufactured. My mourning had been unnecessary, because my husband hadn't died. He had simply chosen to leave. I drove back to Patricia's house, and I sat in her kitchen and I cried. Not the tears of grief I had shed 5 years ago, but tears of anger and betrayal, and a hurt so deep I didn't have words for it. "What are you gonna do?" Patricia asked me, handing me tissues and making tea the way she always did in times of crisis. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm not going to let them get away with this." Patricia helped me hire a private investigator, a discreet professional who confirmed what I already knew. Robert was alive and well, living in that blue house, working under a different name, and apparently sharing his life with my daughter-in-law. The investigator also uncovered the financial fraud. Michael and Sarah had been slowly draining my accounts, transferring money into offshore holdings, selling off assets that Robert and I had accumulated over our lifetime together. They had been systematic and clever thinking. I was too grief-stricken to notice or care. I spent weeks planning my next move, consulting with lawyers, preparing my evidence, making sure that when I acted, I would be protected and they would face consequences. I also did something else, something that surprised even me. I started to heal. Not from Robert's death, because he hadn't died, but from the illusion of our marriage. I had thought we were happy. I had thought he loved me. But a man who loved me wouldn't have faked his death, wouldn't have let me grieve, wouldn't have helped his son steal from me. I realized that I had been living in a fog, not just since Robert's supposed death, but maybe for years before that, accepting what I was told, believing what I wanted to believe, instead of seeing what was really there. On a Saturday morning, exactly 6 months after I saw Robert's face on Sarah's phone, I made my move. I had invited Michael and Sarah for lunch, telling them I wanted to discuss some financial matters. They came readily, probably thinking I was going to sign more papers, give them access to more accounts. But when they arrived, they found not just me, but also my lawyer, Patricia, the private investigator, and 2 police officers. The looks on their faces would have been comical if the situation weren't so tragic. Michael went pale. Sarah's eyes darted toward the door, looking for escape. "Sit down," I said quietly, and there must have been something in my voice. because they both sat. The evidence was presented: the false death certificate, the financial fraud, the conspiracy, all of it laid out in careful detail by my lawyer, while the police officers stood ready. "Where is he?" I asked Sarah, looking her directly in the eyes. "Where is Robert?" She started to cry, then trying to evoke sympathy, trying to make excuses. But I was done being the sympathetic fool. "I loved you," I told her. "I welcomed you into my family, into my home, and this is how you repaid me." Michael finally spoke up, his voice desperate. "Mom, you don't understand. Dad was unhappy. He wanted out, but he didn't want to lose everything in a divorce. So instead, he faked his death and let me mourn him," I said. "And you helped him, Michael. You're my son, and you helped him do this to me." "He's my father," Michael said, as if that explained everything. "And I'm your mother," I replied. But that didn't seem to matter much, did it? The police arrested them both right there in my living room. Sarah for fraud and conspiracy. Michael for the same charges. They would lead them to Robert. Eventually I knew that the blue house would be empty now. He would have been warned, would have run. But it didn't matter. He couldn't hide forever. Patricia stayed with me after everyone left, sitting beside me on the couch in the quiet house. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Honestly," I said, "I feel lighter. I spent 5 years carrying grief that wasn't real, mourning a man who didn't deserve my tears, and now I'm free." "What will you do now?" she asked. "Live." I said simply. "Really live this time." The legal proceedings took months. Robert was eventually found living under an assumed name in another state. He was arrested and faced his own charges. The money they had stolen was largely recovered and returned to me. Michael and Sarah both received jail time, not as much as I thought. They deserved but enough, and when Michael wrote to me from prison, asking for forgiveness, I couldn't give it to him, not yet, maybe not ever. Some betrayals cut too deep, some wounds take more.